Good morning and welcome to another online service of Unity of Bernie. I'm so glad that you're able to be here. If you're a new friend watching, we welcome you and would welcome you to our church that meets at 121 Scenic Loop Road in Bernie, Texas, under normal conditions. I'm just glad if you're new, and a couple of people said that they were going to join us this morning that hadn't for the first time. So welcome. We're in Unity of Bernie, a church that really lives out a mission statement. So many churches can have mission statements that kind of get watered down or forgotten over a period of time. And at Unity of Bernie, our mission statement is we are a vibrant, loving, spiritual community providing a sacred space for personal growth. We honor and celebrate the Christ within all people. It's a place that I call the house that love built. You'd have to see it for yourself to understand what I mean. It's a caring, loving community of people that uphold one another and seek spiritual growth and to be all that they can be while showing love in every way. So I invite you to be part of this, not only our online experience, but when the time comes to safely recongregate to a wonderful group of people. And I bid good morning to all who are watching. And I want you to know how much I miss you, send my love and my best wishes to each one of you. As I've said, one of my favorite tasks is reading the daily word. I usually have some very capable worship assistants that do this, but during this time I get to kind of take this over for a little while. The daily word has meant so much to me for so long, and this morning the daily word is peace, and it reads as follows: Peace flows through me and blesses the world. The light of God shines within all people. Excuse me. I pause to remember this truth as I consider the world and my relationship to it. Jesus said, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you." The same divine light that lived in Jesus is shining brightly in me. My peace is a gift I choose to give to the world. I bless the world by affirming, the kingdom of God is among us here and now. It is through this Christ-centered awareness that I project a consciousness of peace. I live, move, and have my being in the light and love and peace of God. I expand my awareness of divine ideas through prayer and meditation, and I do my part to uplift the consciousness of the entire planet. I am walking in the light of God, and I am at peace. The scripture reading is from Revelation 21, verse 24. My voice is going because I was told I had a sinus infection, and it does this up and down. Wasn't a very serious infection. It's just part of something that's going on, and I found the best thing to do is affirm my way through it. So if I sound a little differently right now, bear with me as we just affirm. It may be a fact, but it's not the truth. And I may sound a little different. But I know I love you all, and I hope you love me, so we'll go right ahead. This morning, I really wanted to talk about great expectations. Now, I know that this was a book that was written by Charles Dickens in the mid-1800s, and it really doesn't have to do with metaphysics per se. However, the title, Great Expectations, is one that I love because it speaks to what we teach in New Thought and in Unity in particular. We're taught to expect the best, to affirm the best, and by doing that, we live the best. And expectations that I'm talking about are manifold. We can have manifestations of what we expect on the outside from other people. We get manifestations of what we expect from ourselves, and manifestations of what we expect from the world at large. We are, whether we know it or not, people that live in expectancy. And I find that we pretty much get what we look for, what we expect. It's said, that an angry person lives in an angry world, and a loving person lives in a loving world. By and large, I think we get what we're looking for. And one thing that I've noticed for a long period of time is that when we put an expectation on somebody, and all of that energy our energy is towards that, then we set them up as this is a funny sentence that I've loved since they are the boss of you, because they get to decide how you'll feel. And it's one thing that I want folks to know is that we get to choose. We're choice makers. We get to choose how we respond to whatever comes our way. And when we expect something of someone and it doesn't go our way, and it's not, everything we'd like it to be, we become disappointed inside. And then we tend to mirror that in other places. Our brains are so fearfully and wonderfully made that we carry what was called, the old term was engrams. The medical term is neurons. But when you get sensory information that's new, that comes in, it fires on all the neurons that have similar things that have been affecting you or something you went through. It's all intricately woven together. So an expectation of somebody who lets you down can key you into an expectation from years ago or minutes ago or whatever it may be that was the same thing. And then soon you're not in charge of you. Something else is running you. And of course, as a minister and one who loves truth and the people that I serve, I want to always reiterate and hold as a supreme truth that you are in charge of you, and the God presence in you animates you as you, through you, expressing as you. So it's wonderful to do an inventory sometimes, there's some spiritual house cleaning, or to see those neurons that feel those neurons that fire in the old ways. Take a moment and kind of clean our mental screen. Dr. Maxwell Maltz wrote a wonderful book in 1960 called Psycho-Cybernetics, where he likened the mind to a computer. He said, we're not a computer, we have one and we use it. Our minds are very much goal-striving mechanisms. This is something that Jesus Christ talked about in the main. He said that as you believe, it is done unto you. And in this season of expectancy, which is Advent, it was what the church calls Advent, season of expectancy, we're waiting. And in the traditional way, we're waiting for the Christ child to be born. And we know in metaphysics that the Christ child is the Christ idea that's born in us every moment, not just December 25th, not in November, not any time we choose to recognize, relate, and assimilate what the truth is about ourselves. And people have said to me, well, what is the truth that I can, lay my life on? What is it that I should expect? I said, well, you embrace the truth of being when you realize you're a living individuation of love. Here, excuse me, it's a little challenging. We get through it. You're a living individuation of love with a job to do that no one else can do. You're unique, and also you're connected to all of humanity by the Spirit of God. you're expressing is you. So when you expect the best, you tend to get it, and it starts inside. The greatest expectation is the one that you can set for yourself that says, I live in a state of expectation of my continual good, whatever that may be. And the old-time metaphysicians stated, call it all good. And that's a challenge, especially right now, the things that we're going through. We can't see that good is necessarily at work, but I promise you it is, because God is still God. You know, there was a saying when I was in ministerial school, one of the teachers said, remember to ask the Wigiat question, W-I-G-I-A-T. And it was a funny word. It stuck with me because what it stood for is to ask yourself, where is God in all this? W-I-G-I-A-T. Where's God? So when we are going through something, or we are expecting something to happen, and we're using our human understanding as best we can, where is God in this? Because we're bringing God with us. We couldn't get away from it for a second. Where is God in what we're going through? When we ask that question, it tends to align our expectations, because we realize that we're leaning into and we're leaning on the very power of creation, that it is us truly. So in this season, I'd ask you to ask yourselves, what are you expecting from yourself? That's the first thing. And what are you expecting from the people that are closest to you? And what do you expect for the world? You know, I don't think any of us expected this that's happened in this pandemic a year ago. It's something that truly was beyond the scope of all of us in a large manner. And then in another manner, I'm not so sure that the separations that we've all set up in so many ways didn't seek to manifest itself in some way. And it could have been this coronavirus. We don't know that. But it's interesting to think about, because we have been so divided and so opposed to one another. And I expect our world to heal in a different way than it has in the past. I believe this situation, I expect this situation to show us that we truly need one another, that life works best when we are upholding one another, and when we are listening to the truth inside that never leaves us for a moment and wants only our good. It's when our human ego gets involved and we say, I know best. One of the things that I've said from the very beginning of ministry, besides the wiggy out, where is God in all this? It's always going to be, right present with me. But one of the things that I've said is that we seek to take these teachings that were put forth by Jesus and make them as practical as he wanted them to be, and wanted us to have life and have it more abundantly. According to your faith, it is done unto you, were his words. And the early church grappled with what that meant. And they felt that it was an outside authority, that they had to set up and worship Jesus and so forth, when Jesus said, I've come to teach you how to live. So when we say that Jesus is a friend that sticks closer than a brother, that is exactly true. The Course in Miracles says, if you knew who walked with you every moment of the day, fear would be impossible. I paraphrase that. So you have, and I have, every right to expect good, but we can only expect as much good as we can embody. And how do we embody more good? We go in and forgive, perhaps, maybe, first of all, this whole pandemic. We forgive those things that we might have harbored a negative thought about or negative thoughts. We understand ourselves. We have patience with ourselves. We're loving towards ourselves as we do this, to release long-held, cherished opinions that we have set sort of in concrete in ourselves can be a very difficult process, or it can be a quick satori experience. You can just know the truth about yourself, whether that stretches out in linear time or whether it seems instantaneously. It's a coming to know that you are choice-making, God-directed, God-filled individual. And I see it as my job to facilitate that in everyone I meet. To the idea of expectations, I can speak to something personally that meant a lot to me and made me ask the question, where is God in all this? I had been asked to serve a church south of San Antonio, about 75 miles. It was quite a commute, and it was not something that I could do practically, but I spoke at that church, and I was told that this was a group of people who were really looking forward to hearing new ideas. They've been without a pastor for a good long time, and they were just very excited. And I stood to give the message on a Sunday morning. I made that, it was a long drive, and I expected a reception that was, they'd be excited to hear, some new ideas, or what I hoped and thought were new ideas to them. And I spoke about this idea of being present in your own power and knowing the truth of who you are. And it was interesting because I expected a result, and there was a goodly number of them that I could tell were uncomfortable with the idea that they stood inside alone with their God. It seemed as if they wanted to worship outside, which is fine. Nothing wrong with that respect, showing of that respect, but ultimately life's an inside job. And one of the people after the service said, "You're saying it's really all up to me and God inside." And I said, "That's right." And he said, "I don't like that very much. I would rather be led and directed." But he was. It's a matter of how you choose to look at it. God gave us, you, me, the freedom to think. We could straitjacket that thinking if we'd like. We can picture a dual universe of a God that sits on a cloud and expects us to do certain things, and if we don't do it right, we lose eternal life. And he's watching our every step, waiting to judge us and consign us eternally to some place that's not very good. And from that, if that's the way that works for an individual, far be it from me to try and change that way, unless they've said this doesn't work for me anymore and they're willing to grow. So I found a mixed bag at that particular place. There's some that basically said, we're afraid, the idea was we're afraid of standing in our own power. And I'm here to tell you, the only power you can stand in is your own and the God power inside you. And that has been called the ecstasy and the agony, because we can only walk by the light we recognize. So if we are constricted inside and we are judging inside, and our expectations of ourselves and other people are skewed in some way, that's what we're going to see outpictured in large part. But if we're open and receptive and ready to say, God, show me something new. Let me see a bigger, grander idea of who I can be. You'll find the evidence for that, especially during this time where it seems like we are all having to separate ourselves and not interact the way we want. We get, if we choose, and some of us can do more than others, we get to go inside ourselves through the meditation and the contemplation, the visualization, whatever you want to call it, and hold hands with the Christ Spirit inside or the Buddha Spirit inside, whatever you want to call it. I don't believe the name is as important as that it's recognized. Because, after all, you're not a puppet. Some people would like to have God pull every string and feel as if, that they're not really in charge. You are in charge, but you have a friend to lean on that guides you and loves you and wants your best. And that's what truth is. That's what the Christ Spirit is. After all, when Christ left this world, he said, I will send to you a comforter, the Spirit of truth. It's here, it's present. You reach out and you take it according to your ability to receive it. Just that the problem is, many of us are not comfortable in releasing the familiar. The familiar feels good. Some people really, and I refer back to Dr. Maltz and the psychocybernetics. He was a plastic surgeon, and he would do an operation on someone's face or body had a scar that maybe was there from an accident or whatever it may be. And what would happen is they would have the operation, and he would take the bandages off, and they'd look at it, and he says, well, how do you like it? And they would say, well, I see the difference, doctor, but I don't feel any different. And it was because their image of themselves was still locked in as having that scar, having that whatever it was. And even though it was removed, they still retained a mental picture of that. So you see, in a very practical, concrete way, you do get what you expect. And you are powerful. It's just that we need to be reminded of that. And we remind ourselves of that through meditation, through contemplating, through those things that the disciplines of whatever we choose. Some do it in 12-step groups. I know people that have no addictions and go to 12-step groups just because they believe that spirituality is so wonderful, and it is. However it's done for you, whatever it means to you, I can't emphasize enough the wonderful, awesome privilege you have of going inside and living your life from the inside out rather than from the outside in. In other words, allowing everything that's happening out there, and we know it's up and down and side to side. Instead of doing that, knowing that we have the steady, constant assurance, the calm certitude of spirit inside us. And I'm going to get to something that's really personal, that has meant so much to me as I've been grieving my father's loss. And this is, when I talk about calm, certain, the certitude of leaning into the Spirit, I'm reminded all the time of what happened to my father and also what happened to me at about the same age. For those of you who have joined me, please understand I'm doing the best I can with what seemingly wants to be laryngitis. Excuse me. So bear with me. But I'm not going to accept it right now at all. So we'll just go right ahead. There was a lady that lived next door to my father when he was growing up, who was always smiling and happy and had him into her house for lunches and, he was a little boy, and she was like a, grandmother figure to him. And his parents knew this Mrs. Whiteman. And my father noticed over a period of time that this lady was immovable in her joy, never speaking ill of other people, never getting negative. And it even affected my dad as at that age, watching that. He'd see the things that came and went in her life by being around her. And my father finally asked the question. He says, what is it that makes you so happy? And her reply was, because I know that God is always good. And I know that I'm to reflect that goodness to everyone I meet. Now, she didn't tell him the other part of it. She was a Christian Science practitioner. And he was too, really, as a young teen, he wasn't old enough to understand that. He was very also influenced very much by unity. And my father remembered that as an example of a believer, my father said, who really walked it and who really understood it and lived the truth. And that's what I seek to be when challenges come to me that could take my joy or could tempt me to get out of where the good place I'm in. I want to get back to the center very quickly. And the center inside, as you know I'm talking about, is the truth of being. So this morning, set an expectation for yourself that mirrors what we're expecting collectively at Christmas. The birth of an idea that is pure love, that is pure innocence, that reminds us of the truth of who we are no matter our age, that we're born hardwired with a presence that loves us, and anybody who tells you something to the contrary is not understanding it properly as I see it. They have every right to believe it. But speaking to the New Thought audience as I do, and being one who's loved this for 30 plus years, to know and realize the birth, the important birth of Christ in you as your hope of glory, as your living of your life right now, and that you are a choice-making individual that can choose something else. Sometimes it helps to write the expectations we have down, and we can watch them line up outside us as we affirm them. Sometimes God has a better plan. Sometimes all the things that we think may be tweaked some because the presence inside us knows what we need to know for our highest good. And one of the things that I've always done when I set an expectation or an affirmation is I've said this or something better for the highest good of all concerned. And I've said that's a divine insurance policy to me. In other words, it takes into account the fact that I may not know everything about what I'm affirming, but in general, I'm putting this out there, and I am open and ready and receptive to receive the ideas of the God presence within. Forgiving ourselves, living in forgiveness is so important. In fact, one spiritual discipline says that we need to be forgiving every moment, that we just live in that state. And if we do that, and we do it for ourselves and for those that are around us, then our life works better. Our meditations take on a different flavor, a tone, a tenor that is loving. And then the love expresses outward. And then our world is healed. We all have an internal world, and there's an external world. An internal world is everything we've placed there ourselves, everything we heard, the time we can remember, the words that were spoken over us when we were children and have great, great effect on us to this day. Sometimes it helps to get a competent therapist, friend, teacher, minister, whatever, to go through the inventory you may feel about what you've carried with you all your life. Because the truth is a shining beacon. It's there, present all the time. We're the ones that have to adjust. The truth doesn't need to. It's eternal, omnipresent, omniscient, always with us. This morning, I just remembered I cut the story short about when my father was Miss Whiteman, excuse me. I also met a woman who was a Christian Science practitioner and a unity practitioner at about the same age my dad did. And she mentioned something to me that I held for a long time and still do. She said, "Jay, can 2 + 2 ever equal 5? And I said, no. She said, no matter how anybody rationalizes or slices it up, where 2 + 2 is always going to be 4. She said, the very principle of God in you cannot be anything but love, and only way you can stop the expression of that love is with your own judgments and your own opinions placed as the most important thing, rather than being open to the Spirit." My father and I talked about our experiences with these two wonderful women. The one I met was named Mrs. Margaret Copper, and the one that he knew was Mrs. Jane Whiteman. And all through my ministry, as I was studying to be a minister, my father and I talked about these ladies and their influence upon us, to know that for certainty that the animating force that guides you, loves you, and directs you is the God presence. What more wonderful gift can you get this Christmas season than the recognition, the realization of who you are? And perhaps you find someone that mirrors that in their lives, and you see that, and it challenges you to come up even higher, to let go the lesser and claim the greater. It's so easy to look out at our worlds and our personality and the personal self and judge and categorize and sort and document up and down. It's very difficult sometimes to just be unconditionally accepting and loving. It doesn't mean that you approve or that you give your assent. It just means you say it is what it is, and I can do my part to make it better. And the part that you can play in making it better many times is to release anything unlike Spirit in you, anything unlike the pure, powerful presence of God in you. And then, when Christmas comes and the season of Advent is over, you can really celebrate the life of the human Jesus that was born and taught beautiful, wonderful lessons, but also the divine example who said, "These things I do, you can do, and even greater, because I go to my Father." All the time, I see Jesus marrying expectations back to us that we were to do and could do everything that he did if we followed the simple rules that, I don't like the word rules that much, the simple concepts that he laid down. And I've said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, body, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself. And then the disciplines that we employ to show that in our lives. That is extremely personal. That in unity, we declare the positive intentions and the principles of truth, that God is always good, and that our thinking is creative, and that through prayer we have access to this power, and that we're called to live it out. That's all that any of us could do, could really want to do, unless we have to have the feeling that we must load ourselves with a lot of doctrine and dogma that gets in the way of direct experience with the infinite truth, with the infinite loving God. We'll set up all types of stumbling blocks, it seems like, so we can say, spiritual life is very difficult. And, I must assume this position in prayer. Eric Butterworth said, prayer is not so much a position, but a disposition. Some others have said that every thought we have is a prayer. I can understand all of that. I can see all of that. But I know that the one thing that I can do is to clean my own spiritual slate, so to speak, and allow the truth of my being to meet whatever it may be, whether it's seeming laryngitis or something that meets me out in public, which I haven't gotten a lot of chance to do that lately, but I think you all understand what I mean. Whatever it may be, that there was, I think it was Richard Bach who said, the universe, if you choose to see it this way, is directed to you. You're the center of all of it, wherever you are, not in an egoic way, but that you're an individuation, an expression of God, and that there's plenty of time, if you want to, plenty of time to sit back, take a deep breath, and realize the truth of your being and expect more. There's nothing wrong with expecting more from yourself. What I think is wrong is when you castigate yourself for whatever point you are at right now. We're all at different points in our spiritual development and growth. All of us have places we could come up higher, and things that we need to work on, and things that we may be very happy we worked on. We're all a work in progress. And I don't like the idea of placing a period where God has placed a comma. And so much theology wants to place periods, wants to control, wants to see people walk in lockstep, affirming one single truth that is the reflection of a fearful and an angry God. I don't believe that, and I don't believe that you believe that either. That's why we gather on Sunday mornings and whenever we get together to affirm the goodness of God, the wonder of our existence. And we know that the more we forgive and the more we love, the better life works. Loving those even that not necessarily like us, and maybe the ones that are giving us the most problems, they sometimes present the greatest lessons we could learn. It's very easy to love those who act like us. The challenge is to love those that don't necessarily express the way we'd like. But when we're loving them, we're loving ourselves as vice versa. We are affirming what we want, and we're calling that out in someone else. Whether or not they change their behavior is not up to you. You've done your part. You have placed divine expectancy on the situation. So in this today, when I speak of great expectations, I guess I can say that the greatest expectation you can have is of the God inside you. The God that is seeking expression every moment through you, and the Christ child idea that we celebrate very soon in this season of expectancy of Advent. Know that what is being born in you every moment is greater than anything that has happened up till now. You see, it's a continuous process. Now is always now. It's always that. And so there's nobody so far down, so encrusted in their negativity and, saying that they're at rock bottom. Nobody is so far down that they can't take that step. It was said, rock bottom is a great place to be because you can only walk up from there. And it takes a decision. I'm not saying that there are people watching this at rock bottom today, but it might be. I don't know. All you have to do is make one decision to follow the truth, to expect that in yourself, and then take another and another. That's what a joyful journey, a growing journey is about. Responsibility. The responsibility you have to yourself. When you meet that well, then it shows. And you become a beacon of light for someone else. You become, perhaps, in a way, the answer to their prayer. They may have said, show me someone who does this, or they might see your example, and it turns a light on for them. It's all, we're so interconnected. And if we look at it from the vantage point physically of space, we inhabit one single round world. It behooves us to get along. It behooves us to love one another and to understand that many of the things that we don't like seeing in other people, maybe there are similar things in us that just don't express the same way. It's been said, and I think it was by Carl Jung, we can learn a lot from the things that trouble us, anger us, or make us upset. We can learn a lot about ourselves when we look at that. So I challenge you this morning to take a look at your expectations of yourself. Not only the expectancy of the wonderful birth of the Christ child, but the wonderful birth of the Christ child in you. It's been said by one minister that I remember. There was a famous minister, I don't know who it was. It doesn't matter that Christ is born a virgin 1,000 times if he isn't born in me once. We look at a God that, we want the God that does magic instead of realizing that we work our own magic by the way we think, by what we're willing to let go of and what we expect and take hold of. That's life, that's living, and that's a daily proposition. I hope that as you set expectancy for yourself, or you are enjoying the season of expectancy up to the holidays, and I know that it's challenging right now, but as you do that, you leave room for yourself to make a new intention. Forgive yourself. Love yourself as you're loved. Seek the company online, in Zoom. We have a Pathlighters meditation every Thursday night at 8 o'clock. Be in the company of people that uphold you, that uplift you, that are looking in a similar direction. That is so important for growth, for true growth, to have people that call out the best in you. And I say that's what we do at Unity of Bernie. We expect a lot from ourselves because we love a lot, and that church overflows with it. And I invite you, when this situation is rectified with this pandemic and it's safe for us to be together, you'll find Unity of Bernie is just a wonderful place to be. Matter of fact, I can't wait to be back doing those things that I did on Sunday mornings. It's magical, something that you'd have to see for yourself. But until then, meeting in this way, I affirm the truth of you, the truth of your being, that whatever needs to be healed in you today is now being done. Whatever your expectation is for yourself in a positive way, I stand with you in that. I stand with you in prayer I see it happening. I see it coming to you. And that's what we can do for one another. We have that ability to hold those thoughts. You see, thoughts held in mind do produce after their kind. You hold joyful thoughts, and you act as if. That's what faith is. You act as if you'll find that becomes true for you. As I referred back, loving people live in a loving world, and angry people live in an angry world, and fearful people live in a fearful world. They couldn't do anything else because that's the filter through which they're seeing their lives. So, come up higher today. Take a step in favor of yourself, and know that not only I stand with you, but everybody else who is thinking similar thoughts stands with you. That's how we raise and lower the collective consciousness. See, it works simply. It's not necessarily easy, but because we have to get our ego out of the way, and that's not always easy. But the simple fact is you're loved. You're loved with an eternal love. You are love itself. You have a partner, unseen, invisible, that I've said puts you to sleep and wakes you up and does 1,001 things that you wouldn't know how to do on your own. Digest your food, breathes you, pumps your blood. This is the intelligence, the creative intelligence that you are. And I salute it in you. I recognize it in you. I bless it in you. And I know that there have been those of you who have watched this who have been praying for me in this laryngitis deal. I can feel it. I think it's getting better. Actually, I affirm it's getting better. See, I need to even expect more. But the beginning of this was a little rough. Thank you for your prayers. I felt it, and you said you were upholding me. I appreciate that. And now I'd like to tell you that my great wish for you this week is that you expect the best from you, and the best from each other, and the best for your world. That's how we're going to build a new and better one. God bless you. And so it is. I suppose that each of you know that churches in this time face financial obligations, just as we did when we met in person. It is especially important now because when we're not congregant in person, it seems like we think about other things, or we get busy with other things, and we forget that the church goes on, ministry goes on. One of the things that I did at the beginning of this pandemic was to form a collaboration called Pathlighters, where we held a similar intention for one another. I wanted it to grow. I wanted us to grow in the midst of this constriction. And I believe we have. But ministry takes funds. It's just really that simple. I've said I'm a minister, a pastor that doesn't like to talk a whole lot about pulling money from people. I believe that you give as you're led to. And the only thing I can do is remind you. And I want to remind you this morning that of all the wonderful things we do, Unity of Bernie, our book study, our Pathlighters meditation, all the things that comprise our church, we do have bills to pay along with that. And I'd invite you to send your most generous gift. There is a PayPal button below you. If you feel more comfortable on this page, if you feel more comfortable sending it through the mail, you can send it to Unity of Bernie, P.O. Box 1973, Bernie, Texas 78006. Again, that's Unity of Bernie, P.O. Box 1973, Bernie, Texas 78006. I invite you to give your most generous gift and remember us during this challenging time. And I expect multiple blessings for you, and I accept the blessings that I know you want to give to us. Thank you. Thank you for being here this morning. Now I invite you to take your gift in your hands as we do in our church service. You may not have it right now. You may not have something to give. You may have the gift right there. Whatever it is, just visualize it or place it in your hands like this. And we repeat the following. Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. And I send it forth with my blessings and my love. And it is so. I believe and know and affirm that as you give, you are blessed. It is said, give and it should be given to you, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. It's a blessed law of life. It is what the divine set up for us, that we're blessed to give as well as receive. And I see you marrying wonderful expectations for yourself and giving generously. Thank you for being here this morning. Thank you for your prayers as I go through what appears to be laryngitis. For those of you that join us at our community hour, I look forward to seeing you at 12:30. And if you don't have the Zoom invitation meeting and would like for the meeting and would like to, please leave a message below and I'll see that you get an invitation to join us online. We also have a book study at 7 o'clock tonight, and you're welcome to be part of that. I just need to know it either on comments below, or you can email us at unityofbernie@yahoo.org. And now I send you the wonderful blessing from Unity's Poet Laureate, Reverend James Dillard Freeman, who wrote our prayer for protection. And it is, the light of God surrounds you. The love of God enfolds you. The power of God protects you. The presence of God watches over you. Wherever you are, God is, and all is well. God bless each and every one of you, and thank you for being here.